Hey everyone, it is Travis Lima here from Paid Memberships Pro. Thank you once again for tuning in on this week's webinar episode. I just want to take some time now to apologize. Unfortunately, while recording this video, I did experience some technical difficulties when it came to my internet connection. And so while recording, some of the video pieces seem a little bit choppy or out of sync with the audio. I tried my best to get it lined up in the editing software that I used, but I still think that you might actually pick up here and there some of the discrepancies that I mentioned. I'm really sorry about this, and if you'll just bear with me, I will try to do better next time. In this week's episode, myself and Kim will basically have a chat on some of the tips and tricks that are required to run a successful membership site. As always, myself and Kim will be following along during the premiere of this video, so if you're watching along with us, please do reach out to us via live chat. We are ready and waiting for your questions, comments, or feedback, and we would love to hear from you. So with that, let's start the video. So Kim, like I was telling you a little bit earlier, I thought to do something a little bit more casual, that we can just kind of speak about a specific topic. And when I was going through the topic list that we were talking about yesterday, one that came up that sort of stood out to me was how to run a successful membership site. And I know that we had some topics of, how to validate your idea, how to figure out if you have a market for your membership site, and all of these things. And they kind of all stemmed from this main general topic of how do you actually run a successful membership site. So I thought we could maybe just dive into a couple of pointers. I could ask you some questions and we can just kind of keep it casual and just see where this goes. I do think that you have a lot of knowledge in this particular area. And the reason why I say that is originally Stranger Studios was a consulting business where yourself and Jason basically did website work or WordPress development work for clients, very much on a service kind of basis. Mm-hmm. And both of you seem to do what many of us are actually trying to do, and that's actually turn their service business into a product-based business, or at very least into some sort of business that generates recurring revenue, because that's the kind of thing that everyone wants to do, and or most people at least. So I don't know, maybe you could give a little bit of a brief background into Stranger Studios and how you kind of briefly went from being a service style business into a product membership business.
Mm-hmm. So we mainly did consulting, I would say full-time, starting in 2006. We were out of college. That was what we did for work. We didn't have a traditional job or any boss of any kind. And we did that until about 2011, when this product and this platform became big enough to maybe start a business around. And really until 2013, 2014, we weren't full-time on Paid Memberships Pro. We were still stuck in the middle of doing both, of paying the bills with the consulting work and also building this up on the side. I don't know if we thought at that time that we would ever be full-time or it would grow to this size, but we just kept plowing ahead with it. So it was around 2014 that it got more serious, that we were like, hey, we're going to dive into this more deeply. We've tried a lot of models for the membership business. We had a lot of pricing structures. We had a lot of ideas of what we'd offer and what we wouldn't offer, and those all have changed so much, and they continue to change, just listening to the customers and what they need. But at this point, it feels very stable, and it feels like we found the right pricing structure, the right offering, the right level selection for people. But it wasn't that way at the start. We definitely were always reinventing, I would say.
I was thinking now about, at the moment, if you follow along some influencers online, or some business people on YouTube or Instagram, there's this huge sort of drive for like recurring revenue, as I mentioned earlier, and to kind of like make a business. And as you were speaking, I wonder how much of it is planning versus this kind of serendipity moment of, you're busy with one kind of thing, and then as you are working, as you are developing your business, as you are trying different things, this kind of like opportunity pops up. And if I can remember correctly, that's sort of how Paid Memberships Pro started in a sense. It was originally designed, the membership plugin as we know it now was originally kind of designed for a client, right? It wasn't necessarily designed to become this grand business. Could you say a little bit more about, sitting down, I want to develop this massive business versus kind of like being agile and just kind of like going with the flow and then forming a business out of something that, there's an opportunity there?
I think there's more risk in that latter option than there is in the way we did it. If you think of like Silicon Valley and investment and angel funds and things along those lines, those are the people that have this idea that they think is unique, and they think it's, bringing something to the market that doesn't exist or something better than something already exists. And they're going to take investment, sell off share of their ownership, and work hard and focus on that in a short period of time to get something out. It's not the model we took. I don't think any membership plugin in WordPress out there has gone that model. Maybe in the older stages of the plugin business, they're taking investment and seeing what can happen with that influx of not only money, but also kind of business knowledge that an angel investor would give you, or any type of supporter. But for us, it was definitely built out of need. And I think for that reason, it's richer, because it wasn't what we envisioned people needing. It was what actual people said they needed. And the feedback was more immediate, because it was immediately going out to sites. And they said like, oh, this is a hang up for me as an administrator. This is a confusing component to people when they sign up. So it got formed, like clay being shaped over time and continuing to iterate on it. It didn't get completely built and then we threw it out to the market and said, tell me if you like this,
Right.
It was shaped on both sides by users, by admins, and then by us as developers.
Great. Okay. Kim, tell me, back in, you mentioned 2011, I wasn't, I actually wasn't working with WordPress then, but I'd imagine that there might have been some potential other plugins that did a similar job, if not the same. And I'm actually not too familiar with what was out there at that time. Is there a reason why, when you were dealing with this client, that you decided to build something unique and custom as opposed to using what was already out there? And can you speak a little bit more about, I'm assuming that there was some kind of particular need that you saw to rather go the route of customizing a membership solution as opposed to using something already out there?
Yeah, largely it was initially built as like gateway to protect access to more of a web app. So it wasn't designed from the get-go to protect posts and pages in WordPress. It was designed to restrict people who could access it from using a more advanced app that was built on WordPress. So the plugins that were available, maybe they would have given you that first piece, but there would have been so much more to take it further down the road. So it was built custom at that time for that reason. Yeah.
Okay, great. I know with our kind of business model at the moment, we have a general direction for how we develop Paid Memberships Pro, but we also take heed a lot to our users and what they say and what they need. And if enough of them or enough of our members make a particular amount of requests or noise, if you will, for a specific feature, then it generally goes on our list to develop. And I think that's kind of true for every single membership business, because essentially Paid Memberships Pro, at our core, we are a membership business as well. And so one of the points that I think we can maybe speak a little bit about is you can have this sort of idea for what your membership business needs or what it should produce in terms of content and features and all of the rest. But there's a certain truth that you can't build completely the business for yourself. You also have to build a business for your customers. Can you touch on that a little bit? Do you think that's a valid point, or how do you find that balance?
I think that's super valid, and it's something we see early on. People are screwing that up pretty heavily.
Okay.
Because they are largely either modeling their setup after another site they've been on, or an article somebody wrote that told them you need these features to succeed. Like you can't succeed unless you have a private member forum. Members are going to want to talk to each other. So you can have all this content and knowledge and courseware, but you have to give them somewhere like a community. Look how successful Facebook is. Don't you want your members to engage at that level on your site?
Right.
Like, you don't know that. You have 0 members. So, I definitely think letting the membership evolve and only building out the features at the get-go that you're comfortable with and that don't require lots of seats in the room is really a smarter approach for that reason. So I guess the question was building for yourself or building for the customer. And I think you just be careful if you start to build things that you think the customer might want, but they've never told you, or features that you yourself don't feel ready to support or ready to be the backbone of for a very long time. We have this case with our own product. We thought that our members would want a community forum. So in addition to having support tickets and getting support related to their issues, we thought, well, they're all doing the same thing. Don't they want to talk and collaborate and help each other and share tips and tricks? They didn't. And it was such a stale aspect of our membership that we just kind of put it away. And it just kind of slowly disappeared from the site. Nobody minded because it wasn't an active feature. And there are communities on Facebook that are huge and thriving that do exactly that. But people are more familiar with Facebook as the place that they participate in those conversations than they would be coming into your website, logging in. They don't have an app on their phone that they can log in and use it. They're not in there anyway, and they happen to see a red bubble for your group, the way that Facebook kind of draws people back into these conversations. So it's an example where we built for what we expected, and as soon as we realized it wasn't going to be a strong feature of the membership, we just said, let's get rid of it because it's a liability. It's not an asset right now to these people signing up.
Right. I think I just want to really drive home that at least in your experience and our experience, is to have this sort of agile mindset of it's not wrong to maybe try and do things and experiment, but you have to be very quickly try and pivot if need be and find that balance of this is a great feature, even because I think the forum feature that we were building into our business was actually, in my opinion, a really great feature to have. But our members just didn't use it in that way, and that's fine. And you can go and spend copious amounts of time and resources and energy and man hours pushing this kind of feature, but then it just sort of fizzles out and then doesn't make sense for anyone. Kim? Yeah.
And that compounds when you are not a technical founder. So Jason and myself, and we have a team of developers. So if a feature requires development, requires technical knowledge, experience with WordPress plugins and customizing things, if you're trying to add those features to your site and you're not technical, it's not only a feature you may or may not actually see use from your members, but it could be a huge holdup to launching. It could be a huge technical debt for you to try and maintain, and just totally outside of your comfort
Right.
zone. So you're already trying to learn a new admin for managing the memberships through whatever software you've chosen. You may be new to WordPress and learning that. If you add in a component that is so foreign on top of it, it's just going to be a big pain point for you for the rest of time. So maybe that's another point to make, is to kind of put in the front the features of the membership that you excel at. So if you are making a video series of how to learn guitar, we have a few guitar, piano, we have violin, we have a saxophone training online. So your strength is music. You may have some technical experience. It may be familiar to you, but your strength is recording those videos, documenting how you would, learn this song or this aspect of playing the guitar, and spend your time in that space. If you're spending days on end choosing a forum software or administrating your forum for 10 people of the 1,000 members you have to be ready to say, oh, cut that out.
Right.
I don't like it, they're not liking it, and it's taking me away from the thing that is selling.
Right. I've seen quite a lot of people in the membership community, and it's not only our community, but just sort of worldwide, regardless of the platform that they are using. It's really easy for some to get really caught up on the tools and the nitty-gritty details of, like, should I be using this platform? Should I be using Facebook? Should I be using all of these things? And you spend so much time on the back end technical things of how the membership site should look and work and all of these things. And you mentioned earlier, but you haven't even got one single member yet. And I think, like, if you can, not to punt our own product here, but if you can use something that's free, easy to set up, and that can get you going quickly, you can soon start, in a way, learning on the job and figuring out quicker what works and what doesn't, and what your members or potential members are actually looking for. Another point that I thought that we could maybe speak about, you mentioned that you and Jason have done a lot of pricing changes throughout the years, and a lot of like chewing on pricing and trying to figure out what is best for your customers, but also for your business. Can you speak a little bit about your journey around pricing? Because I know a lot of people ask, like, what should I price my membership levels, and how do I find that perfect price point? Is there anything that you can add to that?
Well, Jason's our guru of pricing, but I have been along for the ride. And one of the largest points, I think, is make your pricing reflect the value that they're getting and when they're getting it. So that's a key component. And then your pricing can't continue without more value over the life cycle. So recurring membership is wonderful. Monthly recurring membership is wonderful. But if your product, if your membership doesn't deliver a monthly benefit, it's very easy for someone to cancel. If you're $10 a month and you publish one article, your member will be very easy for them to say, I paid $10 for that one article. Is that worth that to me? I don't know what they're going to publish next month. I have very little new content. I haven't gotten any value in month 3, month 4. I'm going to cancel. Like, it's not working for me anymore. So with our product, we've identified over time that their first kind of 2-3 months of getting started with their membership plugin of choice and getting launched, that's kind of the sweet spot for where they will see the most benefit. So if they haven't kind of got it going and launched and kind of proven that they're going to stick with this in those first 3 months, they wouldn't stick around. So we did try a monthly model. It just didn't fit. So now we're on an annual model, and it's a large upfront cost for people. We hear that on occasion. We can do things to help nonprofits and people who need to get started but can't afford that at the get-go. The code's open source, so they have another option. So we're not pricing people out of it on purpose, but we are pricing it where it makes sense. That larger upfront cost, they see most of the value in the first 3 months. By year 2, when their renewal comes, if their membership business is successful, if they have enough members to support it, they have enough recurring revenue, at least $1 a day to pay that membership off or pay our membership, they're going to keep using it at that point. So just pricing reflecting the value delivered over the life cycle of the membership is super key.
Great. Yeah, I think like most of these sort of answers to these questions, it depends on your situation, what you're basically selling and how often. Because like you said, if you're churning out a lot of content on a monthly basis, then perhaps a monthly structure would work for you. But that might not translate well if you are selling one-time access to all of your content. You might need a yearly subscription for something like that. So that makes sense. Yeah. So no, that's great. Kim,
super hard.
Yeah, I think it's just like one of those things. The main takeaway that I'm getting for me is to kind of just get going as quickly and as almost cheaply as possible, and then sort of like, develop your business from there. Because if you get too hung up on all of the details and all of the pricing fix, because everything can be changed, even if you do start on a price point of $50 per month, and you start getting feedback, everyone is saying to you, this is great, I love it, but it's just too expensive, then you can at least make changes. But if you get stuck on the price point on the pen and paper and you never launch the membership site at $50 a month, you'll never find out that, you'll never get any feedback from your customers.
Right.
I know that when I was working for myself, when I was doing website work, a good indicator of my price point was how quickly the client would grab at the quote or the estimate that I would send at them. So if I would send a website quotation out to a customer in the very beginning, say for $100, and they would almost have like no questions asked, like, where do I pay? Where do I sign up? Let's get this thing going right away. Then I could quickly realize, oh, okay, this was quite an affordable website to be charging for this client. And then on the flip side, I could actually see like, oh, it took me 2 weeks to complete this project. So yeah, my pricing was a little bit low for that project. And then that's how I it's not membership related per se, but that's how I went. And then
you have to respond.
You have to respond and maybe just bump your head from time to time.
Yeah.
Kim, is there any other tips that you have off the top of your head? I think you covered quite a few of them, but is there anything else that you would want to add to, like, how does one run a successful membership site?
I think having a free option, if you can, is a strong way to go. And whatever that would include, if it's a free membership that just gives you one download or one sample of your content, depending on what type of site you have, if everything is locked behind a paid access. So with Paid Memberships Pro, it's open source. So the free option is to use it in the open source model and never pay us for it. So it's a way to hook people into your content and into your project. So if you are publishing courses, maybe you can make, a course that has 3 lessons and it's a free level and people try it. It's going to get them familiar with what they'd be buying from you before they've even signed up or bought it or put their credit card in. So it's a strong way to build a mailing list. It's a strong way to, kind of let the product speak for itself with your customers. Not everyone can have a free option. You might have completely, very proprietary intellectual property that you're very secretive about for any reason, or you might just not. The content might be so deep that there's nothing you can section off that stands alone. But if you can think of something you can give away, whether it's a simple PDF or some kind of newsletter series of getting started 7 days, 1 email per day, or anything you can think of that would kind of get them a deeper understanding before they pay you and hook them in.
Right. You touched on mailing list, and that's actually, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because when I was going through some of the history of Paid Memberships Pro, from a marketing perspective, I was curious to see how you went from one member, which one member, which would be the client that you built Paid Memberships Pro. It was probably a different name back then, but that one client, and how it went to 80,000 plus, active installs. And one of the things that I picked up, and this is just a bit of a tidbit, but we'll get to the mailing list part now, is that you and Jason blogged quite frequently, and you were very active blogging on your site. And what I liked about the blogs that you were pushing out, it wasn't these high polished, we know everything about membership, the membership business. It was kind of these like updates as to what you were doing, how you were doing it, and how things were going on this journey. And from what I could see, I haven't got the data on me right now, but from what I could see, there was this huge peak of interest and readers and even sales that eventually materialized because of that constant blogging. And I think the key takeaway here is not, you don't necessarily have to have this polished, depending on your business again, but you didn't have this polished, perfect blog where you claim to know all the ins and outs of the membership business. It was very much on this kind of like, join us on this journey of us building a membership plugin. And I think that really resonated with people, because today people are really smart in the sense that we know that there's competition out there. We know that there's people behind these products, and we know that, or if we can relate much easier with the people who are making and delivering these product or software to us, it just feels a lot better and it feels more real. So apart from that constant blogging and content creation, the thing that you really focused on in the beginning was a mailing list. Now, I know that there are some very good pros to having a mailing list, in addition to, of course, social media and all of that. But could you speak a little bit more about how you built up your mailing list and why it's maybe important, as opposed to, say, having 10,000 Facebook followers or...
We focused on the mailing list because it was where we were comfortable. We weren't that comfortable having a Facebook group or page in the beginning. We didn't have a large team, and early on, Facebook became a place where people were mostly grumpy and not interacting in a positive way. They were using that as a means to either get free support or to complain, certain things like that. So it was just, for me, emotionally not a space I wanted to foster. We decided to put all of our documentation for our open source plugin behind a free membership sign up. So people could find the plugin in the WordPress.org repository or on GitHub. That come to our site and they want to, read documentation of how to set up the pricing on the level settings page. That was behind a free login. People have to still create a user account on our site. They become part of our newsletter list, which they can unsubscribe from at any time. But we haven't put all the documentation out there for them to access without giving something to us. So it's great to do something free and give something away. Just make sure that you as the membership site are getting something in return. They wanted that documentation enough so that they would give us a reel or a throwaway or a fake email address, which is their choice. But it was what we got back in return for our efforts.
Great. I read a couple of months ago this one point specifically with regards to a mailing list that is different from, say, social media accounts, and that is you actually have direct access to your audience. So it's not uncommon for social media platforms to change their algorithm. We've seen it with YouTube and Facebook, and I believe Instagram even, where they can often make it a little bit more difficult. And when I say difficult, I mean expensive to reach your audience. So if you have a certain amount of audience, I don't know the specifics exactly, so don't quote me on this, but if you want all of your audience to see a post that you've shared on one of your social media platforms, then you actually essentially have to pay for it in order for it to properly be seen. And quite often, if you're trying to organically do something, it's not a guarantee that it will show up in every one of your followers' news feeds, if you will. So having a mailing list, and especially a mailing list where you have genuine people, and of course, it's not to say that every single one on that list is a genuine follower. They might have sent you a spam address, and that happens, that's fine. But no matter what happens with the algorithm of the social media platforms, you have this direct access. You can send an email letting people know of that sale, of that new feature launch, of that new exciting blog post, and more likely than not, it will end up in their inbox as opposed to hopefully ending up in their news feed. So I know that was a big takeaway for me, and I know with mailing lists, it really worked for us, and it continues to work for us.
Yes.
And funny enough, it might not work for you depending on your business, because I have a friend who's built his business on Facebook marketing, and he loves it, and he's in the restaurant business, and for him it just made total sense. All of his audience or his target market are Facebook users. He gets to target them through special marketing means, and it works great for him. So again, just like we spoke about earlier on being agile, I think the same goes for that kind of approach. When trying to figure out, would Facebook work for you, Instagram, whatever the case may be, you want to market your membership site where your customers are. For us, Twitter is a big one, because we have a lot of WordPress developers that we want to connect with and speak to about various WordPress topics. So that's why we do Twitter. And more we're seeing that Facebook and a little bit of Instagram, some of our users are there. So that's why we try and accommodate for them. So you kind of have to feel it out and see where your customers are and where they're speaking, and engage with them.
The value of a newsletter is that you don't have to do anything with it from the get-go. You can set it up. You can have it gathering the email addresses of your members, gathering the email addresses of everyone who gets your PDF, but nobody knows whether it's active or stale until they get their email from you. But someone can very easily access your social media accounts and see when your last shared item was. And I think I do this, and maybe not everybody, but if you go to a plugin's Twitter handle and there's the last activity was 4 months ago, you're not inclined to follow them because they're not using this as a regular tool as part of how they're getting their messaging out. So why would I follow this to add one more number to the number of people I follow if they're not regularly sharing via that means? So just like we talked about, adding features can add technical debt. Spreading yourself across all these marketing platforms can also add a debt, but a newsletter doesn't really in the same sense. I do kind of notice if I get a newsletter, I signed up a year ago for some rewards program, and then out of the blue, a year later, they send a newsletter. I'm like, I don't remember, did I sign up for this? So it kind of is a shock, but it's almost a good shock, because you're like, when did I even join this thing? So infrequency can maybe be an asset in that case, but it's not obvious to the people who are on your list when the last time you've communicated with them is. So the way that it is very transparent in a Facebook or a Twitter.
Right. Not to make this video all about newsletters and the rest, but while you were speaking, I was reminded about a podcast that I listened to of the founder of Buffer. And again, the details are a little hazy. I listened to it a while ago, so again, don't quote me on this. But I believe that his name is Joel, and he had this idea for Buffer where you could just kind of send out these how do you call them, scheduled posts on all these different Facebook and Twitter and all these different social media platforms. And what he essentially did was he put up a landing page with a simple subscribe to my mailing list, and he just gave a brief introduction of what he was thinking of building, and he said, if you're interested, subscribe to my mailing list, and then I'll let you know if I build it. And he sent that little landing page out to all of his friends, families, and associates, and within a certain amount of time, it didn't, as I remember, it wasn't very long, he had 1,000 subscribers to his mailing list. And with that, he basically built or started building Buffer. And so that a mailing list can be a great way to just gauge, is my idea a good one or not? And then you can quickly start seeing like, oh, people are signing up to a mailing list. And someone signing up to a mailing list, it takes a certain amount of effort, and people are quite hesitant to sign up to just any old, or at least I am. I don't just sign up to a mailing list unless I'm genuinely interested and I genuinely want to know, or hear about this product, service, or business. So that's a good way to actually just gauge that.
I just wanted to say that reminded me of some of these like not so up and up marketing tactics that we occasionally come across with membership sites. So we've seen membership sites running a sale for the next 4 hours.
Right.
But that happens like every day.
For a year.
Or we see a membership site like, it's closed for the next, 30 people only can get in, and then no one else. These are just like, it's just a lie, really. So that idea that he put that newsletter out there before he built it, like that was authentic. He really hadn't built it yet. He was validating whether people wanted to or not. I've seen people do something similar when it was already built as just like a hacky way to create scarcity and to create an excitement around something. So as a membership site owner, that might be a really successful tactic for you. But I would just make sure that everything you're doing is kind of aligning with your personal values in that stage. So if it feels like it's not authentic and it feels like a lie to people, it's not something we ever would pursue, but we see it happening. We see it working. But hopefully your members don't see that is kind of a false scarcity or kind of created as like a trick.
Right. I just want to say one more thing. So often as myself, as an employee at Paid Memberships Pro, I often think about how, man, I've got such great tools at my disposal. I know how Paid Memberships Pro works. I know a thing or two about memberships. I know how to do certain pricing tricks and all of these things. And then I keep wondering, like, is there not something I can build? And for me personally, though, I'm waiting for that kind of authentic moment. And I know this kind of backtracks now on like, just go for it and just do it and like sort of learn on the job. But I sort of feel that if I don't want to just build something for the sake of building something and just kind of like hope it works or it should work because that's what everyone else is doing. But for myself, I feel that if I could really find a niche where I solve a problem in a genuine and authentic way or help someone in some other way. And I mean, helping someone can be providing a business solution or teaching them a certain thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a charitable deed. But I think what I'm trying to say is if you have a certain level of authenticity behind your business, then you're a lot more likely to succeed or be passionate or even work after hours, because many of our viewers and many of our members are people who might have a job who's trying to build up some sort of nest egg, as we've spoken to in the past, or some sort of side hustle or side business that can generate more income or provide more security for their family. And all of these things will often have to be done after hours, after the 9-to-5 job is done. And so if you're just trying to build something for the sake of building it, you might lose steam along the way. Whereas if you do it because you love it or because you believe in it, you have a much more better chance of it succeeding. So that's what I just thought about.
Yes. It reminds me of all the YouTubers of this generation, and every child I know among our friends group dreams of becoming a YouTube sensation.
Right.
They watch these videos. They are kids getting free toys sent to them by toy companies, or 20 something people sitting in their home, playing all the newest video games and recording. It appears very simple. It appears like something that they themselves could do. I think because the people publishing enjoy it so much, it's so authentic, but there's so much work behind that and so much work for them to have gotten to that stage. And the same for your membership could be very true, that you set out on this journey to help people learn to play the saxophone online. It could be years of you creating the content, publishing the lessons, continuing to kind of drive that project after hours with very little compensation or number of members. But hopefully at some point you reach this kind of tipping point where it's recognized as a resource and people do start to sign up for it. So that was our journey with our plugin. I see it with the YouTubers who published, for years until they either found a certain game that they became popular for playing, or a certain, someone spoke about them, another influencer, and hooked them in and then created their audience for them. But I'm sure many years of this grueling, labor of love almost are behind most of the projects that are successful. Because if you set out to be successful overnight, you have to have the last name that is going to just trigger that, or some connection that's going to trigger that for you. It's not normal. So I don't know. Throw that dream aside and just get ready to do the hard work.
Yeah. And as you said, specifically with YouTubers, I've heard of several very popular YouTubers who've actually said, initially when they started out, they did it because they loved making videos, they loved publishing the videos and actually communicating or engaging with whoever watched it. And for many, it took several years actually before they even sort of became this huge quote unquote YouTube influencer. And I think the same is true for any business. Actually, it's not only defined to a membership business per se, but if you have that drive and tenacity, and often that drive and tenacity comes with passion, or at least enjoyment or love of doing what you're doing.
Yes.
You won't keep up with it. And as soon as you come to one or more obstacles, and I mean, you as a business owner would know, obstacles are plentiful when running any business. You're not going to have that grit to kind of push through. And so, yeah, I that resonates with me. I believe in that. And I think that's something that we all have to find if we want to run anything or make a success of anything, really.
Yeah. We experienced that even in this stage with Paid Memberships Pro. We think of a new feature and we're like, that'd be so much fun. That'd be fun to build. But then, the next day, WordPress 5.3 has a huge timestamp change. So there's focus we need to do on just maintenance and, hardening what exists out there. So, you do spend a lot of time in doing this grueling task that does need your grit to stay focused on and stay excited about. And you will get to do the fun things once in a while and, have enjoyment. Those YouTubers who are grueling, when they strike it big, how exciting for them, or they get to go to some conference and meet some idols of their own. So they're kind of, the passion, gets them through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Kim, I think that is all we have time for today. I think there were some really interesting tidbits which we spoke about, and I just wanted to thank you one more time for waking up nice and early and getting on a call with me.
No worries.
It was great, and I think our viewers are going to enjoy what we spoke about today.
Cool.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you for sticking around until the end of this video. I'd love to know more about what tips you found useful, what was helpful, and if you have any tips of your own. Please leave a comment down below in this video if you are watching at home, and if you are following along during the premiere, we're going to let the video run out for another 5 to 10 minutes or so. So if you do have any questions for us, please drop a message in the live chat section and we'll be more than willing to get back to you. Again, thank you for watching. Bye.
I don't have good podcast equipment. I have good makeup.
Okay. Well, at least one out of the two.